Hey everyone, welcome to Fantasy Book Reviews. My name's Nick.
And I'm Ray. And today we're going to be talking about episode 4 of the TV show Wheel of Time, Amazon's original series. And, it's based off our favorite books. You've been watching. If you watched before, you know what we're talking about. If you haven't watched, check out our series prior. There might be minor spoilers in this for the book or the story as a whole. However, we're going to try to stay away from those as best possible. And if they come up, we'll put a spoiler warning on for you guys. So let's talk about the episode. Big three
Yeah.
likes. Let's start
Yes.
off. I'll go ahead and just say it. I really liked the introduction scene with Gildan falling to Logain and his army. I think it's a really good representation of the destructive force that Logain had, how many followers he had, because people legitimately thought he was the Dragon Reborn. He did too. I mean, a very powerful male channeler, and they, I think, nailed that air of danger around him,
Yeah. I also really like the scene. So in the books, we don't see Logain in his prime. Let's say we don't see him on his destructive conquering spree, and so it's cool to see this little
Yeah.
snippet of him conquering a city and getting one of the kings of these nations on his side.
Yeah,
So
because
that
he
was
is
really
a
cool.
really powerful male channeler. He is. So I think that was a really cool big one. So my next two big likes are in this next sequence, or they're in the same sequence, and that's the whole Matt Rand, and the Fade and Tom, right? So big like one, Brigida, huge fan of her in the books.
You're a huge fan of a doll? That's weird.
Yeah, huge fan of a doll, who the doll's modeled after, if you will.
Yeah.
Brigida Silverbow in the lore, and this isn't a spoiler, but she was a hero, right?
Mhm.
Um, so it's cool to see little lore dumps like that, like they're like Easter eggs almost, So it was
Yeah.
super cool to see. And I'm not going to talk too much about that because I don't want to risk spoilers. So, and then the other part of that is the Fade, just showing the Fade's movements, the way it moves and everything. It like really, I think, showed how well a Fade is supposed to move. Right? When you read the books, they move
Yeah.
a certain way, and you see it move that way, and you're like, oh, that's actually a really good rendition
Yeah.
of it.
They're described as like serpents,
Yeah.
right? Whenever their movements are serpent-like.
Yeah. And then the other big like, I really liked the separation, Tom sacrificing himself again. It really goes to show the true depth of his character, because all we really know of him is, he's a gleeman, and he stole money from them and then gave it back. But, right, you don't think he's this great guy. You don't know it yet. And it shows the character he has, so.
Yeah. And in this episode, right, he reveals kind of why he decided to take the boys under his wing. He describes his Owen or his nephew Owen,
Yeah.
and how he thinks that Matt is a male channeler. We know as kind of an outside viewer that he's got the dagger. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely describes the descent that as a male channeler goes
Hmm.
through, and Matt is pretty similar to that at this point.
Yeah, and I also really like the fact that they kept that in there, the Owen thing,
Yeah.
because in the books, that's literally the only reason Tom started journeying with them in the first place.
Yeah, and it wasn't described by Tom at all. It was actually brought up by another character after Tom
Mhm.
was already presumably killed.
Yeah,
So I also liked the way that they did that.
yeah, I'm glad they
But
kept
let
it in
me
there to flesh out his character.
I'll go into my three now. So I really like the way that the relationship between Nynaeve and Lan is developing. It seems really natural
Hmm.
in the show.
Hmm.
To me, and maybe I just didn't read it well enough. But in the books, it felt very random to me whenever their love interest
Yes.
came out in the end. I think that they're doing a really good job at making it develop naturally.
I think it's a lot better. I mean, I think seeing it on screen also helps, like the characters just rapport with each other, but also it just is better written here than in the book, because in the book it's
Yeah.
literally just like, oh hey, BT dubs, I like you.
Yeah, and as the reader, the first time reader, you're like, "What is this for real?" So yeah,
Yeah, you're like, did I
to
miss that?
take not yeah, not to get into the book so much,
Yeah.
but I think the show is doing that very well. My second like was the corruption from the dagger. You've seen it take hold of Matt more and more.
Hmm.
And we already kind of discussed it, right? I like the connection that Tom makes and why he, it fleshes out why he's there. But yeah, that's my third or my second big like. Now my third like was the portrayal of male channelers, and I'll explain here, right? Lore wise, from the books, male channelers are on average stronger than women, and women channelers are able to handle more complex weaves.
Yes.
And so they're kind of portraying that in this episode with how powerful Logain is and how the women are still able to hold him at bay and they're able to, just keep him under control.
Yeah.
So I liked the portrayal and how they're putting that in.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a really good, again, air of danger around Logain, especially when they had him shielded, right? They were like, oh, it has to be the strongest 2 to 3 sisters,
Yeah.
right? When in reality, in the books, we know it should be 13, right? Fun fact for everyone. But 2 to 3 is better to show on screen. You can't, I mean, how are you going to fit 13 people in there, right? In that little cave.
Well, right. And
Um,
so 13 even in the books is just a custom.
yeah.
It's not a requirement
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
shield a man.
What I will say on your likes in their showing of male channeling, it's really cool to see like they're trying for like an oily look on male
Yeah.
Sidon.
Yeah.
Again, I don't like the way all channeling is really showed in this. I think it could have been done better, but I do like the fact that they at least try to give like an oily surface onto it,
Yeah.
to show the
Yeah,
taint.
you see the darkness in there.
Now, for the big dislikes, I'm gonna start earlier in the episode because I'll talk about the shielding part. That's one of mine, specifically what happens. But Matt, one issue, and this was just a big cringe to me. It's not writing or anything. It was just cringy to see, and that was Matt with the dagger, trying to make it look like he killed the family. Right, he murdered them before the Fate shows up, and he's just like standing there. He's like, right. That looked cringe to me. It did. That pulled me out of my immersion, and I audibly was just like, ugh. So that was like the big dislike on that scene, and that was really just that one moment. The other thing I dislike is the Aes Sedai and Logain, right? So before we shield him, they're all like, oh, let's just gentle him, which is a Reddit jaw thing to do, but just them at camp and everything, I'm like, not really a fan. Where are they headed to? They're headed to Tar Valon, right? They're not headed to Camelin. So really the big dislike here is just the changing of the story. And this is where the story is starting to change, I think, in a big way.
And sorry, can you explain some more? I'm not too sure what you mean. So in the camp?
So just the whole, they're going to Tar Valon, right? And just the way it's handled and everything. This, I think, is where it's really starting to shift away from the actual storyline. They're supposed to be heading to Camelin, right, to parade Logain, show that they captured him in this cage to everyone,
Right.
as they take him up to Tar Valon to be gentled.
Right.
With that, they're not doing that, and that's an issue to me because are they not going to Camelin at all? Because there's a lot of things in Camelin that need to happen. And this is starting a worrying trend, if you will. I'm worried.
Yeah, exactly. It does not seem like they are going to Camelin at all at this point. And it really sucks to not be able to see Camelin. I would have liked that whole scene to happen. It seems like the writers and everyone are trying to put more focus on Aes Sedai and trying to bring in the politics and, everything with Aes Sedai rather than doing that, unfortunately.
I just feel like they could have accomplished the same exact thing going to Camelin. And
I agree. I would have preferred Camelin as well.
I just think Camelin's too big of an important part of the story in the beginning, at the very least. So that's the big dislike. I guess it's more of a story direction, just is a better way to put it. The last big dislike is Nynaeve at the end, Logain gentled. Like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Nynaeve is probably the most powerful woman channeler, right, in 1,000 years. With that said, for her to just blow up and heal everybody like that, what the fuck?
I didn't mind the AoE heal so much. I didn't like it, but I feel like the look of it should have been a lot better, right? It just looks, and this is a problem with the show that I'm seeing a lot, is that their CGI and their edits and everything are just, they look bad. They
Yeah.
look really bad, and that's one of my
There's an
dislikes as well.
inconsistency in it. Sometimes the show looks really good, and then other times you're like, what?
Yeah, Trollocs look really bad. The channeling looks really bad, and while we're on this topic, I'll give you my one of my dislikes as well is the lame Aes Sedai channeling. Right, with
Yeah.
this such a big budget. What did the season have? $80 million budget. For some reason, the channeling it reminds me of Monty Python and the Holy Grail when what's his name, Tim the Enchanter comes out.
Oh, yeah.
Reminds me of that. Like that's what I see when I see their channeling, especially in the fight scene with the Gildean army. That whole fight scene at the camp that happens.
And I'm sorry, how many
It
Aes
just
Sedai were there?
yeah,
They should have
there's
wiped the field with them.
exactly yeah. So the channeling just looks bad, and they're making the Aes Sedai extremely weak
Yeah.
compared to what they really should be.
Yeah. Like Leandrin
'Cause
is pretty strong in the books,
yeah,
canonically.
yeah,
And Green Sisters were there, the Battle of Jaw, right? Canonically, they're
right.
typically pretty strong too. Like, what's going on?
Okay, and so my second big dislike is I feel like they're going way too overboard on trying to make you guess who the Dragon Reborn is.
Yeah.
Right? So in the first 3 episodes, we have Matt, Perrin, Rand, and Egwene. Fine, okay. There's 4 guesses for us. Then at this episode, we're like, oh, maybe it's Logain, even though he's too old. He might be it because he's very strong. Oh, Nynaeve is also really strong. Maybe
Yeah.
she's the so anyone who's a strong channeler could be the Dragon Reborn.
I mean, if
It's
they
just
can channel more than 2 rocks at a time, they might be the dragon.
yeah, it's really how they're making it feel. Again, Robert Jordan, I've said this in previous episodes as well. Robert Jordan is awful at hiding who it is, and it's not totally his fault, right? The writing style that he used.
Stop. There's a spoiler ahead. Rey name drops the Dragon Reborn. If you do not want spoilers to the identity of the Dragon Reborn, go ahead, check out the chapters on the bottom section and just skip ahead to the end of this spoiler. With that was your warning. Back to the video.
Well, also a big thing. So, book 1, and it's the only book that is like this. 74, I think, percent of the book is from Rand's point of view.
Right, and that's what
And in
that's
every
what I'm
other
meaning.
book, it's 20 to like 25%.
And that's what I was meaning by the writing style
Yeah.
of this book, right? Of book 1. He's awful at hiding it because exactly 74% of it is in
Yeah.
that point of view. But the Amazon show is just making it way too much. Like
Yeah.
they're trying to every single new channel that we meet might be the Dragon Reborn apparently.
Yeah. I read a critique online. This is a little sidebar. Not this episode related, but the series related. And it was saying, the issue with season 1 is that it's written as an ensemble drama instead of a main character drama, which book 1 is written as a main character drama, but the rest of the series is an ensemble drama, which I would agree with entirely, because book 1 really is Rand's book. The season is doing the ensemble shit, which will work incredibly well for book 2, book 3, all of them. It'll work well for all books after this book, but this book is primarily his book. So I think that is a big, I would agree with that critique in the way that this should have focused on Rand's point of view more with everyone, because everyone's with him anyways. Then flesh it out, right?
Yeah, I don't mind them trying to keep the Dragon Reborn's identity a mystery in this season, right? I don't mind it so much, but I think that every single new character that's introduced that can channel is supposedly a runner-up for the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I hate it.
So what's your last big dislike?
My third dislike is going to be the Aes Sedai shielding of Logain. At the beginning of the episode, Leandrin tells them that there's only 2 people available to shield Logain because they're the only ones strong enough. But then at the end of the episode, they all link.
Yeah.
If they knew how to link, this whole issue would have been negated from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Because there's more than 2 Aes Sedai in the camp. I think that they said that there's 7 Aes Sedai in the camp.
Yeah.
So right, two groups of 4 and 3, whatever, he would have been shielded no problem, and this whole end sequence wouldn't have even happened. So I just think this is bad writing, and it really bugs me that they just overlooked their own writing.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, even with two sisters holding the shield, because they're holding it, it's not tied off, right?
Correct.
Do you think Logain could break out of that?
I think so. Right, to switch to kind of the book's power levels, I think Logain is definitely strong enough. If they're going on the same power level, right? I think he's definitely strong enough to break out of two sisters solo. But again, that's not even my issue that they're only using two. The issue for me is that they show linking in the show, and yet for some reason they're not linking to shield him. So it just really bugs me, and I feel like it was a huge oversight by the writers and producers and everyone.
Well, the last little thing, I really think the end of this episode was handled. I don't like the way it was handled. The biggest overall issue I have with the story now, Logain is gentled here. Like, what do you mean right now? I don't like that change. It's an unnecessary change. Cool TV, sure, there was a battle and all that. Wasn't needed. There was other cool shit they could have put in, and it potentially changes up future storylines. That's all. This episode, the way I'll describe it, is just the beginning of big change, not small change.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This episode definitely starts a big change in the move of the series, right? So the first 3 episodes where they're definitely not going hand in hand with the book, right? But they're still using the book's outline, it seems like.
Yeah, and it seems close enough.
But yeah, sure. But yeah, this episode really changed everything up, and there's a lot of writing oversights that I saw, and I really did not like. It's just not a good look for the rest of the series so far.
So, an overall review of this episode for me, with my first viewing, right, book bias, I hated it. Watching it as like a fan of just high fantasy genre stuff, it was fun to watch. It was a fun episode. There were obviously mistakes, like little plot holes and shit. But I think this, if I did not know the Wheel of Time story prior, probably would have been their strongest episode so far.
Really?
I will say that.
Okay. I would disagree with that. Outside of taking my book bias out of it, I still... You're right, there was a lot of action in this episode, and there was a lot of stuff going on, but I just... There's these issues, I just can't overlook them, and I did not like them as much as the first 3.
Yeah. Well, what this episode feels like to me is like essentially episode 1 through 3 would be the Fellowship of the Ring, and this one started to feel like, they're actually, the big Mines Moria scene happens, right? And the party split after the end near the river. It feels like this is where the story is starting to move forward. If I did not know the story prior, if I did not have book biases, this would have felt like the most, okay, shit's going to be happening now episode. And that's why I would have rated it the highest so far. And with that, I'd give this a 7. With book biases in, I give this like a 3. So
okay. Well, I'm not gonna give a score based on what I would have liked to see. I actually did a solo video on what I wished that they had done, so you guys can check that out if you want to see what I would have liked to see happen. But yeah, I would give this episode, like a 5.5. There was a lot of action, but man, the channeling was so disappointing to me. I didn't like it. The opening scene was really, there was a few scenes that I really enjoyed, right? A few scenes that I really did like, but I didn't really like this episode. I wasn't a big fan.
That is fair. And that is honestly why I think it is so hard to accurately grade this series, since we know the book so well. But with that, it also gives us a better insight into where those little holes lie.
Yeah, it definitely makes it difficult to rate the series. Obviously, our bias is going to be involved in it no matter what. But I think as an episode, just in this series, right, without even thinking of the book, I did not enjoy it. And obviously, that's my opinion. You rated this the highest one so far for you. So
only because of the action. I'm always a big fan of action.
Yeah, okay,
I'm a simple man.
That makes sense.
But no, I mean, there was glaring issues in this episode. There really was. And with that, I just hope they course correct before it's too late. With that, stay tuned for our future deep dive books, and we'll have more episodes of the Wheel of Time series as well. We've rated the books. Check out all our past videos. Just stay tuned. We're going to be pumping out as much content as we can. With that, Ray, out.
Thanks for watching.